Alright guys, welcome back to another Gunwall review. Today we're taking a look at a pair of Mini-14s made by Ruger. Now, something really interesting about these guns is they were designed in the late 60s, early 70s by Ruger as kind of an attempt to bring a smaller, more compact, lighter M14 style rifle to the civilian market for commercial sale. And in 1973, they introduced the first Ruger Mini-14s as their kind of their flagship for the Mini. Now, eventually they would come out with a ranch hand version of the gun, which would become the base model for the Mini. Now, if you don't know anything about the M14, M14 is a military rifle used by the United States. It was pretty much a smaller version, a smaller, modified, improved version of the M1 Garand. The M1 Garand came in .30-06 and .308. The original M14 was a select fire rifle, unlike a semi-auto like the original M1s, that you can get in .308 and in .30 carbine, or carbine, depending on how you prefer to pronounce it. So, Ruger did design the Minis. There are some that were designed for police and military use that are in semi-automatic, and also select fire models. And there's even some booklets out there you can find online to convert your Mini 14 to a full auto rifle. However, I do believe you have to do some machine work because there is no slot for the selector switch. On the M14, the selector switch was right up here on the receiver, and the military, the designers specifically designed that so you couldn't accidentally switch into full auto when you're trying to semi-auto fire. The M14 is actually still in use in some military units today for designated marksmen, and the M1 Grand and the M14 are still used as ceremonial rifles as well. So let's get into these two particular rifles. This first Mini right here is the stainless steel model. I'm not exactly sure on the year range for this one, but this one is chambered in 5.56 223. These guns became real popular here in the US for pretty much as ranch guns because they have a very similar gas system to the M14, but it is slightly modified to fit for the civilian rifle, and it's pretty much a self-cleaning gas system. So that's why it was real popular with ranchers. You can pretty much throw it in your truck and it's ready to go when you're ready to go, and that's something that was really appealing. Now in the 80s, 87 I believe, there was a lot of 7.62x39 surplus ammo making their way into the United States. Now remember, this is pre-93 assault weapons ban, so a lot of that ammunition was coming in really cheap. So Ruger designed a 7.62x39 model, which was really popular with police forces because of its knockdown. Now 7.62x39 has very similar ballistics to 30-30 Winchester, which is one of the most popular deer cartridges ever. So these guns ended up being really popular for deer hunters. Now, this one here is actually chambered. It's not a Mini 30 in 7.62x39, but it is a Mini 14, but it's chambered in 300 blackout, which when you have it has very similar ballistic properties to 7.62x39 and by correlation to 30-30 Winchester. However, with the 300 blackout, you do got a wide option of pill choices you can choose. I think you go all the way down to 123, all the way up to like 230 something, up in the high 200s for some big round noses. I'm not sure how those would actually feed in this rifle or how they would cycle. Now, as you can see in the shooting clips just before the tabletop, I was shooting these one shot at a time, cycling the bolts in the action by hand, and that is because the only magazine that I had to test with, I left here at the house. Now, these rifles are not mine, so I didn't have that much time with them. Normally, I only get like 1 day of shooting out. So, let's get a little closer to these rifles and take a look at them. First, let's look at the 300 blackout. We're going to check here. Rifle is clear, no mag in it. So first thing to note, these rifles have nearly an identical bolt system to the original M14. It is a rotating bolt that locks into place, and it rotates and locks in 2 lugs and has a 3rd lug back here on the receiver. Now, Ruger, one of their improvements to cut down cost from the M14 to the Mini-14 is they implemented a heat-treated cast receiver in these guns. And I believe a lot of the hardware is also cast. I'm not 100% on that. But it did cut down the cost of production and made it a little bit more price-friendly for the consumer. Now, another thing about these guns is, as I mentioned, they have a very similar gas operating system to the M14. So instead of them doing any changes, they kind of went with what works. Right up beneath here, you have an operating rod that connects to a gas piston. I believe on these here, the way they have it, it's kind of a what's the word I'm thinking? A delayed expansion kind of system. Pretty much what happens is they shorten up the piston a little bit to give a bit of buffer when the pistons move back. So that gives a bit of time for the pressure to drop in the chamber and the bullet to leave the barrel before the bolt actually can rotate. If you can see right there, the charging handle and the operating rod move just a little bit first, and that is under spring tension. So that absorbs from that energy and moves, and then catches the bolt, rotates it out of battery, and ejects. So very similar in the way that they operate, and that's one of the things that make these guns very appealing to a lot of people. Is it's pretty much a war-proven design as far as a rifle goes. Another similarity that it holds with the original M14 is the mag release. The forward release mag release right here at the bottom of the mag well, just like on the M14, and the safety is in the exact same spot. Forward for fire, back for safe. And the mag wells, or the trigger guard is a bit on the small side. You can see that glove warfare, cold warfare wasn't exactly an idea with these rifles. It'd be real hard to get a big thick glove if you're in the cold around here. So if you look here, you notice this one here has an integrated kind of scope mount on it. Now, from what I remember reading, the earlier models did not have this. They had a fixed rear sight, and I believe you could adjust for windage and elevation on it. But they did away with that and gave you your option to add a rail to it. And some models do come with the rail from the factory. And then you still have a spot to mount a rear blade sight or a peephole sight, like on this model here. That will give you a little bit of options for shooting irons if you wish. Now, both of these rifles are in synthetic stocks, and you can get wood stocks. I believe the Ranch version comes with the wood stock. And there's a couple other versions. There's a bunch of versions and models of these rifles. Even Ruger has a preset one that has kind of a tactical modular-ish kind of stock on it, I think with a folding butt stock on it. And then of course there are a bunch of aftermarket parts for these. A lot of people look at these guns as kind of an alternative to an AR-15 for the guy who doesn't like an AR-15. Sure, it's a little heavier, there's less options to do with it, but you can still do a lot of cool stuff with these rifles. You'll see they have a classic birdcage style flash suppressor up at the top, a kind of wing style front post, and this 300 Blackout has a nice thick barrel. Now, if I remember correctly, the newer minis have the thick profile barrel, while the older ones have a more narrow barrel. And I believe that they did this for bullet harmonics, if I remember correctly. Kind of keep vibration down. I also remember reading that they did something with the gas system also that helped prevent vibration and gave a little bit better accuracy. Pretty much what happened is, at one point in the early 2000s, they pretty much went through and reworked these rifles for accuracy involved. And if I remember correctly reading, after they did this work through, they were getting rifles that easily were making 2-inch groups at 100 yards or 2-minute angle drop shots. So they increased it pretty good. I'm not sure what the numbers were previous to the workover, but if they said that they improved it and they like to advertise those numbers, they had to have gotten some kind of significant improvement over in order to be happy and proud of those numbers. So the reason I'm doing a double feature on these is, well, they're basically the same rifle that is chambered in different cartridges, so I couldn't do a video on each of these. As you know, the 300 Blackout is a 223 cartridge that is cut down and necked up, pretty much cut down and then necked down for a 30 caliber bullet. So they didn't really have to change much of anything in these guns at all. In fact, the 223 has about the same bullet length and profile as a 300 Blackout. And let me see here, I can show you that. You can see, so they can even use the same magazines without changing any magazines. And as far as I know, the only thing that they had to change other than the on these rifles really to make the Blackout work is they probably had to adjust the gas system a little bit to handle the different load and recoil from the 300, and then of course the barrel, the chamber and the barrel. Besides that, in theory, everything else could stay exactly the same in these rifles. Kind of just like an AR-15 where you change your barrel out and you might have to adjust your gas system a little bit. But otherwise than that, usually you're good to go. So, let's move over here to the stainless steel 5.56 model. Now, if I remember correctly, this rifle is the older of the two. You can see, it is still completely cleared. It does have the exact same operating system as far as the bolt, gas system on it. All the other controls are exactly the same, but the only real difference with this one, it is in stainless steel, which makes it a great all-weather rifle. And then of course, it's got a different flash hider up here and a different post for the front blade. Now, I'm not exactly sure on the exact model name for this front blade sight or this flash hider, but I believe this flash hider is not original to this rifle. It does look like it was added on their custom at some point, probably before my friend got a hold of the rifle. I don't know the real history on these two particular rifles, besides the fact of my buddy said, hey, I can go ahead and borrow these for a little while and test them out and do a video on them. I'm not going to try and disassemble these rifles. I do disassemble some guns that are easier to disassemble. These I'm not going to do because they're a little bit harder to disassemble, and the way the actions work is you can pretty clearly see everything, how the actions work. Just by cycling the bolt here. So, trying to get a good shot for y'all. So, there's not real need for me to really take these apart. And like I said, they're supposedly self-cleaning gas system makes it to where they're pretty low maintenance. And there's not a whole lot that you need to really work on them besides keeping them lubed up. Your cleaning, that's probably going to be where most of your cleaning problems come from, is lube. If you over lube them, you can attract dust and dirt, and that can cause some problems. But the gas system itself is supposed to be fairly self-contained. So, let's get into a little bit of the logistics on these rifles. I'm not going to really go out and state out the tech sheets on these. I'm going to include the links to Ruger's page for each one of these on their website, and you can look up the specs yourself and see all the little nitty-gritty details on them. But these rifles do MSRP from Ruger right around the $1,000 range. I believe the Blackout's like a little over $1,100, and then the stainless steel 223 is right at $1,000, a little over $1,000. So you're looking at a $1,000 gun, and these can be found cheaper online if you look around finding a used one. Every once in a while you might find these in a pawn shop. Your best spot to find one is you might get lucky at a gun show. Sometimes you're usually going to be getting gun show prices, but you might get lucky. Now, like I said, these do make a good contender for an alternative to the AR-15. You just don't get as much accessibility to aftermarket parts as far as modularity on these. So, if I had to choose one, I've actually wanted one of these for a little while, and if I was to get one, I would have to do a 300 Blackout, just because I don't particularly like 223 5.56 that much, just because I like a little more knockdown with my rifle. As far as the recoil goes, both of these guns actually had similar recoil even considering the blackout is throwing a pill that's, I think, 3 times the weight. Yeah, I think 3 times the weight of the 5.56. But the 5.56 is moving almost 2.5 times as fast, somewhere like that. So recoil was actually very comparable on these, and actually pretty light. They are pretty heavy guns as far as, you know, modern guns go. Not exactly sure on that. Like I said, it'll be in the tech sheet, but they're pretty heavy, enough to offset that recoil. One thing I didn't particularly like about these is the length of pull on these. They have a very long length of pull, and I'm a little on the shorter side, so it's a little uncomfortable shouldering this rifle because of the length of pull. However, it wasn't impossible for me, so I don't see it too big of a problem, especially seeing how you can replace these stocks and get something with a collapsible stock on it. That's not really too big of a deterrent. Now, if I did want something like this, personally, if I had the money, I would actually opt more towards an M1 or a M14 if I could find one, and either 308 or a 30 carbine, simply because I like Army surplus guns, I like old guns, I like guns with physical history behind that particular gun. Most of the time, unless you find a police surplus gun, the gun's not going to have any real interesting history behind that particular gun. So that's what I would like to do if I could find one. However, the M1 Grands can be found in the same price range, and I believe I think there was the M1s or the M14s that just got released by one of the Koreas as part of a surplus program, and they were actually really reasonable, but I believe they were produced in Korea. Don't quote me on that one, but those were really reasonable. But an M14 semi-auto, been converted to semi-auto, is going to cost a pretty penny. And a full auto, of course, you're going to have to go through all the registration and all that stuff in order to get it legal. So I would choose that. I've been wanting an M1 Grand for a while, but that might be on the list later on. But would I buy one of these if I had the spare change? Yes, I would if I had a spare change. They make great deer rifles. They make good planking rifles. You get decent accuracy out of them, and I'm sure you can tweak some stuff on them and get really good accuracy out of them. And they're fun rifles to shoot, and the ammo, pretty much all 3 of the cartridges are reasonable. 300 blackouts on the higher end, but it is starting to come down in price a little bit now that it's becoming more mainstream. So I think here in the next couple years, 300 blackout might be in the same range as maybe 308. Right now it's still a little cheap, more expensive, but I have seen some boxes that were cheaper. In fact, I think at Walmart, just when I bought these, I got a box of American Eagle blackout, and I think I paid $12 for 20 cartridges, which isn't that bad. Still pricey, but they're getting there. But it's gonna be a while before we see them 7.62 by 39 prices, if we ever see them get that low. So, would I buy one? If I could get one in a good price range and 300 blackout, I would. I would opt more for the 7.62 by 39, but I already got a 7.62 by 39 rifle, so I would go with something that I don't have. A good practice, though, is to have multiple rifles and guns that use the same cartridge, because then you don't have to buy so many different types of ammunition, and you can have ammunition compatibility with all your guns, but that's a discussion for a different story. So, would I recommend it? If you got the money and you want a good self-cleaning gas system rifle that's pretty easy to maintain, it's ready to go when you're ready to go, and it's a good deer gun, and you got the coin, go for it. These make good guns for those purposes, and they're actually light recoil, so if you're a little recoil sensitive, that's good for that. They're good guns. Let's see if I think I missed anything else. The rear sights on these, they're both aftermarket sights. Well, this one here might be a original Ruger sight. but I'm pretty sure the one on the stainless isn't. It's just kind of a dinky little flip up peephole sight with only elevation. I think that's everything I talked about. I'm not going to talk about the scopes because that's not what this video is about. Trigger pull on these. You got a little bit of take up, and then a good crisp release. I'd say it's maybe like a 6 pound, 7 pound pull. It's not horrible, it's not great. I don't know if they make aftermarket trigger grips for these guns, but I imagine you can do some wizardry inside there if you want to get a little better pull on those. But I think that's everything, guys. Yeah, I think that's it. I got some other stuff coming up. I'm going to have another video here in the next couple days for another cool gun that I got my hands on for the week. And I'll be back with you for that one. I'll see y'all guys another time. Y'all have a good one. Be sure to come over here and subscribe. And of course you have to hit the little bell. Otherwise we won't show up in your notifications each time we post a new video. And check us out on Facebook and give us a like. We post all of our content there as well, as long as some pictures that we take. Speaking of Instagram, you can check us out on Instagram too. We post all of our pictures, some short clips that don't end up on YouTube, along with a little bit of funny stuff, some game recipes, and we're also on Twitter. You can check us out on there, some of our posts. We keep everyone kind of in the queue along what we're on to and what we're up to and what we're doing, along with some other posts about some other things that we like. So be sure to check us out on Patreon. We could always use the support. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up, but that stuff kind of isn't cheap, so every little bit of support helps and will help us get out some good content for everyone to see.